Welcome, everybody, to our panel discussion on a framework for fairness, a discussion topic on data bias and algorithm fairness, about a company's journey to diversity, equity, and inclusion in data science. Joining me today for this panel discussion as our panelists is Dr. Cecilia Orellana-Rojas, Senior Vice President of the National Diversity Council, Jeanette Mumbeck, a Data Science Manager at 8451, a division of Kroger, Grant Gilkerson, a Director of Data Science at 8451 also, and finally, Wes Rhodes, Vice President of R&D and Tech Transformation at the Kirby Company. Let's start with giving the panelists a chance to introduce themselves. Cecilia, can you give us a little bit of your background?
Definitely. Good morning, Dan, and good morning, panel members. How are you today? I'm very happy to be here and share with you some insights around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I am in charge of strategy and research for the National Diversity Council, which is an organization that works with corporations and communities to foster diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And the role that I have in terms of strategy and research is basically taking care of all of the consulting functions around diversity and inclusion for our partners and clients, as well as the educational efforts such as the Diversity First certification program and any other training that we offer to our partners across the U.S.
Thank you very much. Jeanette, can you tell us about yourself?
Thank you, Dan. Glad to be here. Looking forward to have this conversation with my fellow panelists, Cecilia and Grant. Before I introduce myself, I think I'd just like to take a moment to tell everyone a little bit more about 8451. We are a retail data science, insights, and media company. We help the Kroger Company, consumer packaged good companies, and our partners to create a more personalized and valuable experience for our shoppers. We leverage our first-party retail data from nearly 1 out of 2 U.S. households and use more than 2 billion transactions to create a customer-centric journey. I'm part of the science function. We're a small group dedicated to longer-term research in such disciplines as forecasting, optimization, and machine learning.
Grant, can we get a little of your background?
Yes, hi, Grant Gilkerson, data scientist with 8451. It's great to be here with you all today, along with my panel members, Dr. Rojas and my colleague, Jeanette. So I've been building and deploying machine learning algorithms for my entire career, so that's 20 plus years. Currently, I am leading a team at 8451, a team of data scientists that focus on optimizing price and promotions for Kroger.
And finally, Wes Rhodes, tell us about you.
I'll be happy to, Dan. I've been with Kroger for 3.5 years. Prior to Kroger, I came from IBM. Was with IBM for 18 years. My job at IBM was to work as many hard problems as possible. I worked in the office of the CEO, and whatever difficult problem any IBM customer had, I got assigned to it. One of the problems I had in the past was working with Kroger. Fell in love with that company, so when it came time to retire from IBM, Kroger was the first company I came looking for.
Well, thank you very much, Wes. Let's start our panel discussion off with a question to Cecilia. As the Senior Vice President of the National Diversity Council, can you give us your insight on the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion? What are the benefits of diversity in a data-driven world and the importance of DEI in artificial intelligence?
Yes, definitely. First, let us define diversity, equity, and inclusion. In terms of diversity, this is not only about the representation of multiple identity groups and their cultures in the workplace, but it's also about recognizing, respecting, and valuing those differences, right, that the groups bring to the workplace. Equity, on the other hand, is an approach that ensures everyone access to the same opportunities. And equity recognizes that advantages and barriers exist And as a result, not everyone starts from the same place. So as a process, equity begins by acknowledging this unequal starting place. It makes a commitment to correct and address that imbalance. Well, what about inclusion? Inclusion is a key driver and also a core element for reaping the potential benefits of diversity. So while diversity is about respecting and valuing differences, like I said earlier, inclusion is about fully leveraging the differences of all employees to foster creativity and innovation. So we know when inclusion is part of the organization's culture, all employees are allowed to reach their full potential while contributing to organizational success. So promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion is not only a socially responsible initiative, right, but it's a strategic business decision, an imperative to innovation and success. Now, let me just put that into context. There's ample evidence, and I'm sure you know this, that gender diversity drives results. And according to a McKinsey report, companies with higher executive level gender diversity worldwide are 21% more likely to outperform their peers in EBIT margins and 27% more likely to outperform peers in long-term value creation. So that's one data point, right? A Wall Street Journal ranking examining diversity and inclusion among the S&P 500 companies concluded that diverse and inclusive cultures provide companies with a competitive edge over their peers. So adding to the growing evidence, this research confirms that socially diverse groups are more innovative and productive than homogeneous groups. So diversity, equity, and inclusion must be a priority at the CEO level. That for sure we know. A diverse group of people, whether by race, gender, age, sexual orientation, cognitive style, or any other diversity dimension, brings unique experiences, unique perspectives, and ideas leading to innovation. And this is why DEI should be embraced as an opportunity to attract and retain customers, to expand product lines, to increase sales. Now, when it comes to artificial intelligence, research shows that lack of diversity has a profound impact on the creation, development, and implementation of AI products. So with the growing use of AI in sensitive areas such as hiring, criminal justice, and healthcare, bias in the data or the algorithms can have profound impact on individuals and society in general. And my panel members know that many experts welcome AI as a tool to correct human biases that have always existed. Others are concerned that it may reinforce human and societal biases. So the opportunity is twofold. Use artificial intelligence to identify and reduce the impact of human biases and improve AI systems to prevent them from perpetuating human and societal biases.
That's amazing. And the probability of success associated with diversity and equity inclusion that's amazing. And for me, working in a highly competitive industry, I don't want to lose any advantage I can get.
Exactly.
Jeanette and Grant, I know you both have been on this journey for quite some time. While you're working at 8451, you're obviously part of the data science community for a long time. Can you tell us a little bit about the motivation in your journey at 8451 in pursuit of DEI?
Absolutely. Building on what Cecilia just said, our D&I journey started several years ago. And being a data and science company, it just made sense to include how we do our data and science work. So at the end of 2018, we formed our algorithm fairness team. At that point in time, we already had a well-established data science practice. So we had a platform and processes that we could use and leverage. One of the first things we really wanted to do was to understand the landscape. So we partnered with the University of Wisconsin to get a better feel of what was happening in academia, what's happening in big tech, and help craft a path forward. We also spent some time with some of our teams looking at our data assets and our algorithms. And towards the end of 2019, we executed company-wide awareness training and also some deep technical training for our data science and engineering communities.
You started in 2018, is that what you said?
Yep.
Well, that's so far that's a 3-year journey.
Yep.
That's impressive. So it seemed it's not an easy job, obviously, and many industries are trying to figure this out. Wes, I'm turning to you. Can you give me some background on why data bias and algorithm fairness is so important to the Kroger company?
Well, it's imbued in our values. I mean, to us, fairness, respect, high quality, freshness, and above all, transparency. I mean, those are the values that we use to define respect for our customers. The minute we thought that there was a blind spot, we immediately went and got the best minds to go after it. And that's where the subjects about data and algorithms come into play. The minute we found that out, we immediately attacked it long before it became a discussion topic. And that's the way we work. We saw that commitment to customer first. That's what all these words mean to us. The minute that we saw that was an issue, we started working on it immediately, and I'm very, very glad we did so. Very proud of our company for pioneering in this area, and we've made some tremendous progress that I know some of that we'll share with you today.
Thanks, Wes. Cecilia, can you give us your insight on the state of fairness in data and AI in the industry? What is happening to motivate these companies? How big of a challenge is it? How are they preparing?
Sure. Well, first is the economic impact of artificial intelligence, right? We know that it's tremendous. According to a McKinsey report, artificial intelligence could create a 13 trillion increase in the world economy by 2030. And that would boost GDP by 16%. The report, however, warns that the technology will widen disparity between countries and also between companies and even between citizens in both economic and opportunity terms. So experts say that algorithm bias is a pressing ethical and societal concern. So that is also bad for business. So it behooves companies to build a framework of fairness to ensure that algorithms are free of biases as consumers become more aware of the impact of algorithm discrimination in their lives and their communities. So companies will lose in the marketplace as consumers learn that their needs are not being served. So the foundation to build a framework of fairness is a true commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion as an organization. And as a cultural change initiative, DEI requires active leader engagement in the change process. So senior leaders must become chief architects of the transformation, right? And commit to making DEI a strategic imperative to set the foundation for a workplace where inclusive policies and inclusive practices allow employees to fully contribute to business goals. So as diversity, equity, and inclusion is embedded in business practices, companies then position themselves to create opportunities for high levels of employee engagement, creativity, and innovation.
That's amazing. And that really rings true for me also, as we find that more and more consumers want to shop at a retailer who has the same values as they do. Right? And so it becomes important not only that you have those values, that you express them also.
Exactly.
So a framework for fairness. Grant, I'm sorry I'm leaving you out. We're going to have to ask you a question here. A You at 8451, you all talk about a framework for fairness. If I don't know what that is, can you give us some more insights?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, you know, first thing we have to recognize as it relates to the use of algorithms is that algorithms can be quite beneficial, right? They can make our lives easier as it relates to how we explore the news or how we navigate our streets or how we shop. But just as this can bring benefits to ourselves, it can also bring potential harm. And so when we, set off on this journey that Jeanette was mentioning a few minutes ago, one of the things that we wanted to focus on in our efforts was we want to make sure that the algorithms, and we certainly do use a number of algorithms at 8451 and within Kroger to drive our business. We wanted to make sure that we are not bringing harm to our customers and to our business. To focus on that efforts, we wanted to develop a framework to help our teams do that. Now, 8451, we have a very established data science and really data practice. We have over 200 data scientists, over 200 engineers, product. We have a large number of data practitioners that are across many different teams delivering solutions to influence various parts of not only 8451's business, but Kroger's business, whether that be the supply chain, whether that be what happens inside a store related to the products that we put on our shelves, the prices, the promotions that we set on those products. We have a very prospering media practice, a communications practice. So we have a large number of applications where algorithms are very much a part of the success that those applications have for not only our business, but for our customers. So when we set upon we want to make sure that these algorithms are not harming our customers, that they are treating our customers fairly. Developing a framework, we needed to make sure to take a tact that a framework that could work across all those different applications. So in other words, we wanted to build a highly generalizable framework, not a framework that was just going to work on one part of our business, but a framework that was going to work on all parts of our business. So our framework has three parts to it. The first part is what we ask our teams to do when they're building a algorithm is to do an assessment of that algorithm as well as that application. And that assessment is really to understand the potential impact that algorithm is going to have on our customers and our business. And really we're asking our teams, it's a set of questions that we ask our teams to consider to walk through. These questions relate to the data that's being used to build that algorithm, the specific application. What's that algorithm going to help to do? It's going to focus on, well, what's the outcome that algorithm is attempting to optimize? So these questions, and we're asking our teams to do this up front before you even go build an algorithm, but after that algorithm at least has been conceptually designed, we want our teams to walk through these questions to understand the risks that may be involved down the line when this algorithm gets deployed. And again, the focus on is minimizing or really eliminating harm that could come to our customers or our business from the use of this algorithm. So that's the first part, is going through this impact assessment. The second part is we're asking for our teams, once they go build the algorithm, to go audit the algorithm. Audit in the sense of go look at, now that you have that algorithm trained, go look at how it performs across different demographic classes to understand, is it treating demographic classes differently, in particular in a way that could lead to harm to certain classes. So that's the second part, is that audit. Then the third part, if there is a potential of harm that algorithm could bring, again, because of its perhaps disparate performance across classes, we do ask our teams to remediate or to fix that algorithm before it gets deployed into a live setting.
That's tremendous. As I listen, and you all have been doing this for quite some time, as far as data science occurs, and started this program in 2018. And some might perceive this as extra work to get an algorithm done, but I really think it's necessary work to get an algorithm done.
Yeah, I totally agree, Dan. In fact, you know, we like to say at 8451 that this isn't a monumental change to the way that we go about our business. It is a change, but it is something that we certainly, you know, it's really asking our teams to change for the better, right? Change to make sure. I think it's, you know, when you're Kroger, and we know the impact that we're having on individuals' lives via providing them a place to find their food, to feed their families. Certainly, this is a very important aspect that we want to make sure that we're not harming our customers. And so it is a change, but it absolutely is something that we feel that this is worth doing.
Thanks.
Dan, if I can just build on that, you know, obviously the thought of introducing extra work was a concern. And, you know, as Grant and I started this journey, we did talk to our COO, Milan Mahadevan, about this. And we just loved his response. He simply said, no, it's not an extra step. It's just how we do our work.
That's nice. That's very good. So if I may go back to you, Cecilia, obviously 8451 is doing a great job working on their framework for fairness. I'm sure you see a lot of other companies trying to do the same thing. What are the big obstacles for them?
Yeah, and I think Grant mentioned some of that in terms of, you know, the unconscious bias piece, and I think that's very important. And I also like to hear from both of you, Grant and Ed, about, you know, what you are doing to identify unconscious biases within your teams, within the people involved and the scientists involved in this work. I think that's one of the obstacles that companies face because of the human factor, right, in the creation of algorithms. So what are the kinds of things I would like to hear from you first that you are doing to address unconscious bias?
Well, you know, one thing, Dr. Rojas, that comes immediately to mind is you're right. First of all, that you know, we do have to recognize that each of us has unconscious bias, right? And so, you know, one of the things that we have employed within our practice of building algorithms is we do have a robust peer review process that we ask our product teams to go through when developing those algorithms. And that peer review process, part of that is asking or really pulling together a diverse group of individuals, and usually these are 8451 employees, but we do want that diversity of thought, right? We certainly don't want to you know, just have, you know, a single individual or maybe a single product team review an algorithm. We're really trying to get that algorithm reviewed via a diverse set of individuals that have different perspectives. So that's one way that we're trying to encounter or at least approach that question.
That is excellent, and definitely companies are doing different things to do just that. One other thing that, you know, companies are doing more intentionally is providing opportunities to really raise the awareness through DEI training, unconscious bias training and workshops where employees are involved in the process, right, of understanding the levels of biases that they may have, and making plans, right, intentionally to overcome those biases and unconscious biases that we all have, like you said. But in terms of suggestions to overcome all of these obstacles, I think that's the second part of the question that we have. What is interesting is that I've done some research, and in a report by the McKinsey Global Institute outlines a number of suggestions to maximize fairness and minimize bias in AI. And one of them is being aware of the context in which AI can help correct for bias, as well as where there is a high risk that artificial intelligence could intensify, right, or amplify bias. Another suggestion is to establish processes and practices to test for and mitigate biases in AI systems, which is what you're doing very effectively. Engaging in fact-based conversations, right, about the potential biases in human decisions. Also, fully exploring how humans and machines can work best together. I think that's a really interesting piece. And finally, this is very important as well, investing more in bias research, making more data available for research and adopting a multidisciplinary approach so that intersectionality becomes very important also in the way that companies are doing research to further understand bias and how it impacts AI.
As you're all talking, I have to think in the back of my mind is and Grant, I'll pose this one to you. How do you know when you achieved fairness? Is there a measurable outcome?
Well, there certainly are, and then there's and the academic researchers over the last several years have come up with technical definitions that to achieve fairness. In our practice and in our journey, one of the things that we have found is that fairness can vary by the application. So there is a context-specific aspect to that. But, I like to think of it a little bit more simply, is that you achieve fairness when you know, or when you can ensure and you have evidence of that your algorithm performs just as well across different demographic classes. Some of the newsworthy or maybe news-making examples where algorithms go bad is certainly in those cases where algorithms don't perform as well for certain minorities. Facial recognition being a prominent example. There have been a number of really researchers that have shown that different facial recognition algorithms don't work very well for, or at least they work less well for minorities, Black individuals, Black females in particular. So when you think about when do you achieve fairness, a lot of that boils down to, at least for me, is that does your algorithm work just as well for the majority class as it does for the minority class? The other thing that, in terms of like achieving fairness, is I also don't think of fairness as a box that you check. Okay, hey, this algorithm's fair. We've checked it. It's good to go. Let's ship it. It's an ongoing work, right? That just as an algorithm is evaluated for its performance once it's trained, it needs to be constantly evaluated as to its performance as it's being used in that live setting. So when you check for that ongoing performance, you want to continuously evaluate an algorithm's performance, not just for its precision, but also to make sure that it's continuing to treat the subjects that it's treating, whether that be customers or patients other types of individuals, that algorithm is treating those fairly even 2 years after it's deployed.
Fantastic. Well, Jeanette, you've been doing this for 3 years. I'm sure it has not been a smooth ride all the time. Any lessons learned?
Definitely many lessons learned, Dan. One of the key lessons we learned that not only is this a very complex subject, it's also very nuanced. Grant had spoken before about how we wanted to make sure we have a generalized framework that we can use across our data science community. That framework is a 3-step process by design. That allows for our teams to sit with subject matter expertise as they go through the assessment process. They can have conversations around whether they went about it the right way. They can leverage resources such as the University of Wisconsin during auditing and remediation to ensure that they actually solve any problems in the right way. One of the other pleasant key lessons learned was the response we got from our associates as we started this journey, and we started bringing people along. Team members would come to us and say how proud they were to work for a company that's willing to invest in doing this. That sort of support just gives you the groundswell to move things forward and get momentum.
That is great. Not only do our customers want, or do consumers want to do business with a company they share values with, people want to work for a company that they share values with. So I can see how they would embrace that. So Cecilia, 8451 seems to be doing a great job of regulating themselves so that they are doing the right thing from a DEI perspective. There's much in the news about potentially other types of regulation. Do you think that's going to occur? What's that going to look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I agree with the perspective that the use of AI will eventually be regulated. And like you said, in recent months, we have learned that the U.S. Federal Trade Commission is looking more closely at the potential for algorithms to perpetuate discrimination, right? The European Union released new rules to govern the use of AI in areas that lend themselves to bias, such as hiring, home lending, law enforcement. So proponents of regulation are saying the time has come to create a federal agency for artificial intelligence. That's what we're hearing in the news. We're learning that across the AI community, there's growing consensus that regulatory action of some type is essential as the impact of AI spreads. So the sense is that artificial intelligence presents a growing number of issues, right, that the private sector alone cannot resolve.
That will be interesting. Jeanette, how do you think that'll impact your work? If there is a federal group regulating AI.
Dan, hopefully positive. We have put a tremendous amount of work into this in the last couple of years, so I truly believe that we are ready. A concern here would be is just to ensure that legislation around data privacy continues to support the AI side of the house. In terms of algorithm fairness, we do need certain data components to be able to ensure that our algorithms are fair.
Grant, if I may come back to you, when I think of data science and I think of data, I think of technology, but what you're going through is much more than a technology change. It's a cultural change, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And the reason why for that is a few things. One, and Jeanette hit on this earlier. One of the things that we did in our first year working on this initiative is that we recognize that that a lot of our employees, our data scientists, engineers, our product managers, this is, even though like everybody I think is humans. We all have our, our belief on what's fair, what's not fair. But when you apply that to algorithms and products that we're building and delivering, we recognize that there is a need for awareness and training on this topic of well, what does it mean for an algorithm to be fair? What kind of concerns when you think about bias that an algorithm could perpetuate, and the reasons why that bias could actually be perpetuated via an algorithm? So we recognize that there was a need to bring awareness to our 8451 community. So that's what, as Jeanette described, that is one of the things that we did in our first year. But then we also recognize that data scientists themselves, and this is changing, but data scientists themselves in their education, perhaps even within their initial job training, they're not really trained to evaluate or really to scrutinize the algorithms that they're building for fairness concerns. So that this is a bit of a new area, right? This is something that really, has only been focused on either from academics or practitioners for maybe the last 5 years or so. So it is still an emerging area. And because of that, we still recognize that our data scientists, they do need to be trained to this. Now, I would say that, all data scientists, when they go build an algorithm, they always evaluate that algorithm to how well it performs, right? They're picking some sort of performance metric, something related to the precision of that algorithm as it relates to the targeted outcome. I don't think this is not a big pivot to ask our data scientists to, when they're evaluating the performance of their algorithms, something that they've always been doing, to build in a slight extra step to evaluate that performance across different demographic classes. Again, this is not a big departure from the way that they've been working all along. The other thing that I'll mention here is from a cultural or change aspect, certainly when you think about companies, even 8451 as an example, we've also recognized that a need to develop some policy around this area to guide our product teams. So without that policy, what we don't want to have happen, especially in an organization like ours, where we have many different product teams that are building different applications, we don't want fragmented efforts, and we don't want our product teams deciding for themselves a level of perhaps bias that they're willing to tolerate. So we do want to provide them some direction. So developing policy is something that we are currently working on at 8451, and I do think it's also a part of that change journey.
Great. Well, I can see some questions coming in, and we're kind of running out of time. So I probably want to wrap this up with a couple, one more question and a couple comments. But Cecilia, I'm sure different organizations are at different stages on this journey. It seems like you might want to get some guidance if you're going on this journey. And so what would you recommend as people our organizations are starting on this journey?
Yes, and as I mentioned earlier, then first and foremost, leaders must be committed to the DEI journey, from my perspective, to the diversity, equity, and inclusion journey. It is essential for organizations to systematically assess, to be systematic in the assessment of their organization, to really identify where they are before and during the implementation of DEI efforts. So, Ryan was talking about, the process of measurement, right? When it comes to algorithms, the same needs to be taking place within the organization overall. So setting diversity, equity, and inclusion goals with accountability measures is essential to ensure progress in the area of AI. Leaders also need to create and communicate an inspiring vision of what the change will achieve and empower employees at all levels by soliciting input. So this is, a process of change, and it needs to have the commitment from leaders and also the buy-in from employees.
Wow. So we should probably shift to Q&A here in a moment, but question to any of you three. First, thank you for the discussion. I learned quite a bit here today, but any final thoughts that you would have for the audience before we go over to the Q&A?
Dan, I would just encourage people to start the journey. There will be some difficult conversations along the way. Welcome those. Continue to get C-level support to drive the outcomes they seek.
Thank you. Grant or Cecilia, any thoughts?
I like to think of, or I guess at least for me, I approach this question of algorithm fairness idealistically. Certainly, when we think about the pervasiveness of algorithms in our society, and as I mentioned earlier, these algorithms they provide a lot of tremendous benefit in a number of areas of our lives. But that said, they certainly have been shown to perpetuate bias. And so idealistically, I like to think like, hey, as a data scientist, I never thought I'd be on the the front lines of battling potential discrimination or bias. And if I have a role in eliminating that, that's certainly something that I want to take on with all my effort, with all my time and focus that I can bring to this very important matter. And certainly, as Jeanette said, please, start the journey. If you haven't already, please do so, because I do think that this is a very important question. It's only going to continue to get more important as algorithms continue to influence all of our lives. And so if we all have a role in trying to eliminate bias within our culture and society, and can do that via eliminating that via our algorithms, then I think that is absolutely something that is a worthy endeavor.
Thanks. Cecilia, any final thoughts?
Yes. So when it comes to our artificial intelligence, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a requirement. DEI is a requirement. DEI must be strategic focus of the organization in order to build a framework for fairness. And without a systemic focus, the organization will be unable to address the imbalances that hinder full inclusion, and also, the creation of artificial intelligence free of bias.
So Wes, a comment from you, a final comment from you. You work for a Fortune 20 company. What advice would you give to other companies as they start their path down this road to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
I think the thing I would say is, don't make it something that you're just trying to check the box on. I need some of this, I need some of that. It has to be the way you believe. It has to be the way you achieve. It has to be the way that you interact with everybody inside your company. It's a belief system. It's an understanding that everybody has value. It's an understanding that different perspectives are important. It's an understanding that this is the way I'm going to achieve competitive advantage, bringing everybody's different points of view, different perspectives. It's understanding that everybody has a place to contribute. That's the way that we get advantage. That's why this is so important to us. Not only is this subject important for our customers, but it's important for our employees, because this is how we win. So that's why it's important for us. And this is the way that I would give the advice to anyone. You want to win? Excite your employee base. Get them to make the products that your customers care about. They have to care about it first. So that's my advice. Get your employees to care, get everybody to contribute, then your customers are going to care.
Well said, Wes. Thank you so much.